The lobby of the Grandeur Plaza shone with its usual elegance, the air filled with a scent of exclusivity and prestige. A dark-skinned man, Elijah Vance, walked calmly through the doors, carrying a small suitcase and wearing simple clothes with a black cap tightly fitted on his head. His eyes scanned the place with the familiarity of someone who knew every corner, but without revealing anything in his expression. He approached the reception desk and placed his hand on the polished surface. "Good evening, I'd like a room." The two receptionists, both blondes and with impeccably made-up faces, interrupted their conversation when they saw him. The first, Tiffany, gave him a quick glance, scanning him from top to bottom with a slightly raised eyebrow. The other, Brittany, after a brief hesitation, smiled with a kindness as false as it was forced. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have any rooms available." Elijah bowed his head slightly without taking his gaze off Brittany. He then let out a soft, almost imperceptible laugh. "Interesting," he muttered. "Are you sure there aren't any?" Tiffany typed with exaggerated slowness on the computer, as if to demonstrate she was checking something, although her expression already gave away the answer. "That's right, the hotel is completely full," she answered in a mechanical voice. Elijah slid his gaze towards the screen and could clearly see several available rooms. He looked up at Tiffany and noticed how she quickly looked away. "Really? Because it seems that there are several free." Tiffany sighed and crossed her arms as if she was losing patience. "You see, sir, our rooms are usually occupied by a certain type of clients. People who look for a certain standard." The silence that followed those words was so dense that it seemed as if the air in the lobby cooled down. Elijah kept his expression neutral, but his jaw tensed slightly. "A certain standard, yes. We do not want our regular guests to feel uncomfortable," intervened Brittany with a tense smile. "You understand, right?" Elijah remained calm, although his gaze became more penetrating. "Let me see if I understand. I am here with money in hand, ready to pay like any other client, but you decide that I do not fit the standard of this hotel." "It is not personal," said Tiffany with a condescending tone, "but there are other places that might be more suitable for you." Without knowing it, she had just made a fatal mistake. Elijah placed both hands on the counter and smiled barely. "Suitable for me?" The receptionists exchanged a fleeting glance. Brittany shrugged with mock pity. "Maybe a motel up ahead has space," she added in a sweet voice, as if she were genuinely helping him. "Or we could call a taxi," Tiffany suggested with a soft laugh, "to take him somewhere more appropriate." Elijah let out a slow exhale. "I'm going to ask one last time. Are you going to give me a room or not?" The receptionist no longer bothered to pretend to be polite. Tiffany sighed impatiently and shook her head. "Look, we don't want any trouble, just go." Brittany crossed her arms. "Yes, don't make us call security." At that moment, Elijah stopped smiling. His formerly calm gaze now had a dangerous glint. "So, you're going to call security because a black man wants to stay at your hotel?" The receptionists tensed, but neither of them bothered to deny it. "Simply, we don't want scandals," said Tiffany with a harsher voice. Brittany nodded with disdain. "Yes, we don't want any trouble." Without knowing it, they had just dug their own grave. "I understand," Elijah muttered. The lobby doors swung open, and a tall and burly security guard, Officer Jenkins, walked in with a firm stride. "Is there something wrong here?" he asked, directing his stern gaze towards Elijah. Tiffany smiled with relief. "Yes, this man refuses to leave." The guard clicked his tongue and walked towards him with tense shoulders. "Sir, I suggest you leave before I have to remove you myself." Elijah didn't move. The receptionists exchanged a triumphant glance, certain that the problem was solved. But the worst was yet to come. Officer Jenkins stood in front of Elijah, crossing his arms impatiently. His imposing presence was meant to be intimidating, but the subject he faced didn't even blink. He just held his gaze with a calmness that only thickened the tension in the air. "Sir, you heard the receptionists. If you don't leave by the good, I'll have to get him out," said the guard in his stern and definitive tone to the two receptionists. They exchanged satisfied glances, certain they'd won. Tiffany inclined her head towards Elijah with feigned kindness. "Come on, sir, let's not make this more complicated than necessary," she said as if she were talking to a child. Brittany smiled with a superiority that lit up her face. "Yes, it's not worth making a spectacle, just go away." But he didn't move. His expression remained serene, without a hint of fear or anger, as if none of this surprised him in the least. Then, with the same calmness of someone about to make a simple observation, he raised a hand and took off his cap. Silence fell like a loud bang. The receptionists froze, their smiles suddenly vanishing. The confidence on their faces transformed into a mixture of disbelief and panic. The guard, who until then had remained steadfast, frowned in confusion. Something in the capless man's gaze made him swallow. "You all have no idea who I am, do you?" Elijah asked, his tone calm but with a hidden edge. The receptionists blinked several times, desperately searching for an explanation. I stammered, Tiffany, her face losing color. Brittany tried to regain her composure, but her voice trembled as she spoke. "Who?" Elijah took a deep breath and then exhaled, looking at them as if he was deciding how severe their punishment would be. "My name is Elijah Vance," he said, pausing to let it sink in. "CEO and owner of the Grandeur Plaza Hotels." The impact of those words was devastating. The receptionist's eyes widened, and Tiffany felt her legs give way. Brittany brought a hand to her mouth as if trying to stifle a scream of horror. The guard took a step back, his authority crumbling in a matter of seconds. "What did?" Tiffany managed to say, her voice breaking. Elijah tilted his head, watching them with a mixture of disappointment and amusement. "You know what the funny thing is? I've been to this hotel hundreds of times, I've invested millions into it, I designed it, I built it from the ground up, and yet you all decided that I don't fit your standard." The receptionists felt the weight of his words like an avalanche crashing down on them. "No, we didn't know," tried to justify Brittany, but his voice trailed off when he saw Elijah's expression. Elijah nodded slowly, crossing his arms. "Exactly. You didn't know. Instead of treating me like any other customer, you assumed I didn't deserve to be here." Officer Jenkins, still shaken, tried to intervene. "We were only following orders." Elijah let out a low, humorless laugh. "Orders from whom?" "The policy of silent racism." The guard didn't know how to respond. Elijah took a step forward, and the silence became deafening. "Okay, now I'm going to give you my own orders." The receptionists tensed, their bodies rigid as statues. "You are dismissed." The sentence fell with the force of a guillotine. Tiffany staggered, looking for something to hold on to. "Please, Mr. Vance, it was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't," he said coldly. "You made a decision based on prejudice, and now you're going to pay the price." Brittany started to snivel. "No, please." Elijah didn't even blink. "Gather your things and leave." Officer Jenkins watched the scene, his heart pounding. "I?" he asked, his voice shaking. Elijah stared at him, analyzing him. "You came later. You weren't the one who started this, but you didn't ask any questions either. You're also dismissed." The guard felt the ground sink beneath his feet. Elijah took a step back and picked up his phone. "I'm going to make sure the entire hotel industry knows what you did. Good luck looking for a job." The receptionists burst into tears. The guard lowered his head, accepting his fate. Elijah put his cap back on, and with one last look of disappointment, turned to leave the hotel. Outside, he took a deep breath. This wasn't the first time he had faced discrimination, but it was the first time he had encountered it in his own home. And the worst part is that he knew that this was still happening in many other places.